Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1984 classic, The Karate Kid. Now, before I go any further sharing my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Brian for requesting this review and reviews of the entire Karate Kid film franchise. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Karate Kid is one of those films that has definitely earned a timeless status. It's one of those movies that's considered a quintessential 80s movie, to the point where certain scenes and certain lines of dialogue have become embedded in pop culture. And it's a film that I did enjoy when I was growing up. I did watch it whenever it was on TV as a kid, but it was not one of those films that I turned to consistently, like The Goonies or The Monster Squad or the Rocky films or some of these other movies that I grew up with and watched quite often as a child. But it's a movie that I definitely get a kick out of even to this day. It's a film that, while I don't feel or agree that it's a masterpiece of its genre like other people do, I still appreciate and admire a lot of the things about this film that really do work. And while I feel that there are some flaws, some things that prevent it from being a absolute surefire classic in my eyes that I would watch over and over again, it's still a movie that's entertaining and puts enough of a spin on some of the old ideas it's working with to make it feel like it's its own story. Now, the film is directed by John G. Avildsen, who directed Rocky, and at this point in his career, he had directed a handful of pictures, so he was more of kind of a seasoned vet at this point. He wasn't a guy who was just trying to make his name in Hollywood or trying to figure things out. And that definitely did showcase here with this movie. It's a film that doesn't really have a lot of ambitious shots in it, but when there are ambitious shots and moments where the direction is taking a risk, whether it's trying to shoot a scene almost entirely in one shot, like one of the sequences during the karate tournament, or shooting scenes at the beach with Miyagi and Daniel training, or some of these other moments throughout the film that are a little bit more challenging from a directorial standpoint, because of the fact that John G. Avildsen had so much prior experience, he was able to use that and not have any pitfalls, not have any moments where he tripped up. And that's really what makes this direction as solid as it is, because a less accomplished director might have stumbled a little bit with some of these sequences, might have not been able to shoot the karate tournament in a way that maintains consistent thrills and really showcases all the moves and the choreography in the most satisfying way. You could see a less accomplished filmmaker try to shoot things in a way that kind of covers up their warts, covers up their inability to shoot certain scenes in a particular way. And that's not what happens here with John G. Avildsen. His experience directing Rocky definitely did pay off when it comes to the thrilling karate tournament scenes, because they are still some of the best karate tournament scenes in all of cinema. And I think a lot of that is owed to John G. Avildsen, because he just knew how to capture the drama and the emotion of sports, of a competition, in ways that very few filmmakers were able to. And while those sequences are great, and there's other shots in this film that look really good, and consistently the film looks pretty slick, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a film that has direction that's going to stun you when it comes to just how spectacular it is, when it comes to the shot selection or the movement or the use of camera angles or zooms or pans or other things. But it still provides a very solid foundation and some good roots for this film. And I think John G. Avildsen also was a guy who worked really well with his cast and his crew, and helped create the proper environment that really showcased itself in a lot of different ways in the finished product. Overall, it's a solid job, well done by John G. Avildsen in the director's chair. Now, the film is written by Robert Mark Kamen, and this script has some absolutely amazing moments in it. I mean, this is a film that has not one, but multiple iconic sequences and lines of dialogue. Sweep the leg, put him in a body bag. The scene on the beach with Miyagi and Daniel training, and other moments like wax on, wax off, and paint the fence, and the scene where Miyagi and Daniel are at Miyagi's home, and Miyagi's trying to catch a fly with some chopsticks, and Daniel got lucky and caught it. You know, stuff like that. Like, there were a lot of moments in this movie that really stick with you. The Halloween party, the violent aftermath of the Halloween party, where Daniel looks like he's about to get his head kicked off by Johnny until Miyagi comes in and kicks some butt and saves the day. Or the finale at the tournament, in particular, you know, the crane kick, which is one of the most iconic and well-known fight scenes in all of cinema. It's right up there with the scene where Rocky hits Apollo and knocks him down. It's a screenplay that has so many of these great moments. It features a really strong and just splendid dynamic and connection between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi that is very real and very genuine, and full of wisdom and wit. You have the villains who are every bit as memorable as any of the other characters in the film. I mean, Kreese and Johnny and all these other Cobra Kai guys, they are the epitome of characters that you love to hate. And it has a simple but effective premise of a kid who's like a fish out of water, moved from one state to the next. He's in unfamiliar territory. He tries to make friends, has the hots for this new girl that he meets on the beach, sees that she's broken up, like she's free, and he decides he wants to try to maybe get to know her better and maybe turn it into a relationship. But then you have her ex who gets involved and isn't going to let shit slide and forget the past. And that creates a rivalry between Daniel and Johnny. And Johnny and his goons, his friends, make Daniel's life a living hell. Throw him down a hill, beat him up, do all these different things that you would see in your typical kind of bully movie. Like My Bodyguard, for instance. And like something like My Bodyguard, the kid who's bullied finds a way to defend himself and ultimately gains confidence as well as some respect from his bullies. And if that isn't a solid or effective enough premise or plot point, then you throw in the karate stuff, and then it becomes a sports drama that's full of a extra bit of drama involving a kid who's bullied, who overcomes his bullies through sports, in this instance, karate. And I think, yes, that is something that's very cliched. It definitely does feel like teen Rocky, but it's something that's just taps into a very relatable thing for so many people. And I think that's a big reason why this film resonates so strongly with a lot of people, is that it taps into that whole feeling and those memories that people have from back in high school when they were bullied. And this film, in some ways, is a bit of catharsis, where they are able to overcome these demons through this movie. You're able to relate to Daniel, and because of that, you connect with him on a deeper way. And when he overcomes these odds and he kicks Johnny Lawrence in the face with a crane kick, it's something that is so rewarding. You feel like you were there, or you were somehow in Daniel's position, and you were the one that was kicking your bully in the face. Like it's that kind of catharsis that's so strong, despite the fact that that whole plot line, everything about that is so cliched. It's so typical, but despite how cliched it is, it has a certain strength to it that is undeniable. My issues with the script are really down to some scenes that, in all honesty, could have been cut out, that I think would have improved the overall flow of the story. For instance, there is a scene with Allie and Johnny and Daniel at this this party at some kind of country club or whatever. I get why that scene's there. It's to establish that Allie can hold her own and be able to fend off Johnny. But they already had scenes prior to that moment where you could get the idea that Allie could honestly fend for herself. That if somebody were to try to force something on her, she would be able to handle things. And that's why I don't think that scene was needed. It just kind of broke the flow up a little bit too much. I also would have had Miyagi start building his friendship and his bond with Daniel a little earlier in the movie. I get why they're doing the slow burn, slow build kind of thing, but I think it's a little bit too late. It's not late, period, because I do like the fact that it's building up to it, but I think you could have had it come in a few minutes earlier, and I think that definitely would have helped things as well when it comes to the pacing of the movie. Because this movie, it's over 2 hours, and this is a story that just doesn't really have any business being that long. And there are moments where the film, to me, does suffer from that. And I can see why there were some scenes deleted, and I think it was a good idea, because if those scenes were kept in the movie, it would have even slower pacing than it already does. Also, speaking of Allie, I don't really think the romance between Allie and Daniel is really that strong. It comes across sweet and charming, but I don't really ultimately buy that the two are madly in love with one another. I think that comes down to the script and how things are set up. Like, they go to the arcade to golf and stuff, and they play miniature golf, and they play arcade games and do go-karts, and it just felt like it was a fun time, but it didn't necessarily feel like it was a date. Like, it just felt like they were two friends having a good time with one another. And there's not enough moments where it really felt like the relationship between the two of them was really solidified and felt very strong. Even at the tournament, like, she's there with him, but I mean, she might have kissed him, but I don't remember it that much. I mean, comparison to the romance between Rocky and Adrian, like, or even within within the Karate Kid franchise. I mean, Kamiko and Daniel. I mean, I think the relationship between Kamiko and Daniel is a lot stronger. I think it's written in a way that is much more resonant. Um, so that just made the scenes that are trying to focus on Allie and Daniel, while sweet and charming, just not really feel like they had as much emotion behind them as I feel it could have, which is why those scenes just kind of fell a little flat for me. And it's not really anything that's the actor's fault, but it's just one of those things where I think the script could have done a better job making that relationship feel more special. Now, other than those things, though, I think it's a good script. One thing in particular that I really love is the moment where Mr. Miyagi is drunk on sake and he shares his pain with Daniel. He shares a very rough a part of his life with Daniel. And you get to know Mr. Miyagi more on a deeper, more personal level. And that's a scene that producers wanted to cut out, but John G. Avildsen and a lot of other people involved with the film fought for it, including Pat Morita. And I think that was absolutely the right move and the right call, because that is one of the most emotionally effective scenes in the entire film is that scene. And it just makes the bond that Daniel and Miyagi form throughout the film so much more solidified, and just so much more genuine and real because of that moment where Miyagi was vulnerable and shared that vulnerability with Daniel. Now, speaking of Daniel, might as well talk about the headliner. Might as well start talking about the cast. This is a really good cast. I mean, you've got Ralph Macchio as Daniel LaRusso. I know there were a lot of other actors that were considered. I think Charlie Sheen was one of the first like major choices that they wanted for the movie. The rumor is that he turned it down so he could do Grizzly 2. Like, if that's true, like that's a mistake. That was a mistake on Charlie Sheen's part. But at the same time, I think it was fate, because I can't see Charlie Sheen playing Daniel LaRusso. I don't think that really would have been a good fit. He doesn't have that weakness to him. Like, I'm not saying that Daniel is a wimp, or he's a weakling. But what I meant is he doesn't really showcase that vulnerability that I think really makes Daniel such a relatable character for a lot of people, and makes him stand out from Cobra Kai and Johnny Lawrence and his friends. Now, I think there were also other actors that were considered, but ultimately Ralph Macchio got the part. He won the role, and it's the role that he's most well known for in his career, for a good reason. This is a great character, and it's a really good performance. Ralph Macchio at this time, he was just full of charm and charisma. He was just likable. You just liked the guy. And despite the fact that he plays a kid who is flawed and is a bit of a hothead, there really wasn't a moment where you hated this kid and you thought he was a little snot or you wanted to kick his ass. At least not for me personally. And I think in large part that's due to what Ralph Macchio brought to the role. And when it took for him, when it was time for Daniel to stand up for himself and enter the tournament and fight, I did feel that Ralph Macchio pulled it off, despite his less than imposing physical stature, because he just sold it so well. Like, he just went in. He went all the way in, and committed. And also, I mean, the chemistry that he formed with Pat Morita was just legendary. It is just some absolutely powerful stuff. And speaking of powerful, might as well start talking about Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi. I mean, Pat Morita in this role wound up completely changing people's view and idea of what he was capable of as an actor. Prior to The Karate Kid, he was known as Arnold from Happy Days. There was even an episode where he dressed up like a sensei and did some karate, but it was all a joke. And he really lobbied hard for this role of Mr. Miyagi. He wanted it badly. He had so much passion, energy, and just heart and soul that he wanted to put into this performance. It meant so much to him. And the producers of this film, they just completely thought that initially he was an afterthought. They didn't even think that he was even someone that was on their radar. He kept pushing, and once they couldn't really settle upon somebody, like they had Toshiro Mifune in, and he had a good audition, but they just felt that he was too similar to his other roles that he's done in the past, and English wasn't his strong suit either, so they would have had to accommodate some things in that regard, and they felt that would be a little difficult. So Pat Morita, he completely reinvented himself for another shot to play Mr. Miyagi. He grew a beard. He did some research and adopted an accent from one of his family members and went to the audition and just wowed them. Just blew them away, got the part instantly, and the rest is history. He completely reinvented himself. He took so much risks when it comes to this performance, like, and to getting this role. Like, he put everything into this. He put everything on hold. He was just like, no, this is my destiny. I am going to be Mr. Miyagi, and I will not take no for an answer. And it's a similar kind of devotion that you had with Sylvester Stallone in Rocky, where he completely changed the trajectory of his career and created a legacy of his own because he was so headstrong. He was so confident. He would not take no for an answer. It was like, no, I'm playing Rocky, and no one else is doing this. And it's interesting that John G. Avildsen directed that film, and he directed The Karate Kid, and there's a similar sort of thing going on with Pat Morita. And this is a performance that for a lot of people, he is the most well known for, and for a good reason. Like, a lot of people nowadays, they don't even remember him at all as a stand-up comedian or a guy who was in Happy Days. They remember him as Miyagi. And he got an Oscar nomination for this performance, which was well deserved. I just love Pat Morita in this film. I love this character. He is so wise and witty and fun, just the kind of character that you love being around, that you would actually like to get to know yourself and form a bond of your own with. And the chemistry between Pat Morita and Ralph Macchio, it was just magic. It was absolute magic. Now, the actors who played the terrors, so to speak, you know, the Cobra Kai, the villains, they were equally as strong. I mean, William Zabka as Johnny Lawrence, like, prior to this role, like, he had already had a lot of experience playing these douchebag, jock, bully characters. And man, was he at the pinnacle of his douche bagginess in this movie. Like, you just wanted to kick his ass. So when Daniel winds up kicking him in the face, you were cheering. You were like, yes, got him. What a douchebag. What an asshole. And at least that's how I felt about Johnny Lawrence. I don't feel that way anymore because Cobra Kai just completely reinvented and just added so much depth to his character and redeemed him in so many ways. But in this film, he's your typical unlikable jock bully. And he plays that role really well. And speaking of unlikable bullies, I mean, the rest of the guys, I mean, Chad McQueen is Dutch, Ron Thomas is Bobby, Tony O'Dell is Jimmy, Rob Garrison is Tommy, like the whole Cobra Kai gang. Like, they all had their intensity, and they all just had this look and this way about them that was snobby or snide or just mean and nasty, and you just hated these guys. But you loved to hate them because the performers were just having so much fun playing these just jerk off teenagers. Put him in a body bag, you know, that kind of stuff. And then of course their sensei, John Kreese, Martin Kove. Martin Kove, this is another role that he put his career on hold for. He was so gung-ho and dead set on playing John Kreese that he just turned down multiple projects, multiple film roles that were being offered to him in pre-production or during casting for this film, just waiting for a callback. And once he finally got called in for an audition, like, he just had so much anger and vitriol at the director and at the casting people for not getting him in the room earlier, that he was just really intense. And that actually worked out. In a lot of different scenarios, that would not work out in his favor. He would just get fired. They would just ask him to leave the room and he wouldn't get the part. But with Kreese, it just sold them on him being able to bring this character to life. Sweep the leg. Yeah, you know, like, he's just such a nasty, evil type of guy. He's over the top, but in a way that's so much fun to watch. I mean, even Martin Kove has mentioned that there are tons of fans who tell him that we hate you. Like, we hate this character, but we love it. We love to hate this character. And it's an accurate depiction of John Kreese. Like, he's such a slimy snake in this movie. Like, you half expect to see a forked tongue coming out of his mouth during his scenes. And then, of course, you also have Elisabeth Shue plays Allie. And, you know, she's fine. She's cute. She has her own charisma. I felt the chemistry between her and Ralph Macchio was decent. But I wouldn't say she's one of the bigger standouts in the cast, but she's still good. You can definitely see why Daniel and Johnny would fight over her. And there's a couple other performers. I mean, Randee Heller, who plays Daniel's mom. That's definitely a performer to mention. But yeah, it's a really good cast. The film also features some gorgeous cinematography by James Crabb, I think it's Crabe. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing it or not. I probably am, but yeah, this cinematography is just gorgeous. I mean, the shots on the beach in particular with the sunset are just... It's the kind of stuff you could take a photo of or a screenshot and frame it and put it on a wall or put it in an art gallery and it would be right at home. I mean, even the scenes at Miyagi's home where Daniel's just doing chores, just the way that they were shot, the way that they look, even that had a certain beauty to it. And that's not even counting the stuff with the bonsai trees. It's just a really nice looking film. And it just has this, it just puts you in this really calm, serene mood and vibe during these scenes where Miyagi and Daniel are training and they're doing all these different things, and Miyagi's teaching Daniel all this wisdom, and it's really a very chill vibe, and the cinematography just emphasizes that even more. And then the film also features some good editing by John G. Avildsen, Walt Mulcahy, or Mulcahy, I think that's what it is. Bud S. Smith. It definitely is something that that is showcased during the tournament, and during stuff like the Halloween party, and then the sequence where Daniel was cornered by Johnny Lawrence and the bullies. And then Miyagi comes out of the smoke and the fog and starts kicking ass. Or during the other scenes previous to that, where Daniel's getting bullied and tossed down a hill, or being terrorized by Johnny Lawrence. And of course the scene where Miyagi he holds his own against Kreese as well. Although I might be getting that confused with one of the sequels, which is a possibility. But either way, it's a well-edited movie. And then, of course, you got to talk about the music. I mean, the score by Bill Conti, I'm not going to say that the score as a whole is as memorable or as iconic as the score in Rocky, but it's still a really good score. And the main theme, like the Karate Kid theme, the one that you hear during the tournament, prior to Daniel hitting the crane kick and after, that is a very iconic piece of music. I will say that piece of the score is every bit as strong as anything in the Rocky films. But the other pieces of music, they're just kind of there for me. The soundtrack, it's got a good soundtrack. Of course, you got You're the Best Around. You've also got Moment of Truth by Survivor, which is my personal favorite song on the soundtrack. You got a few other tunes that are decent as well, but those two tracks are definitely the ones that stand out the most. And it's a movie that was really a sleeper hit. Like, it was one of the biggest sleeper hits of the year, because it's a film that nowadays a lot of people look back at fondly and view it as a classic. But prior to this film getting released, it wasn't really on a lot of people's radar. Pat Morita was not known as a big star, and definitely not known for dramatic roles. Ralph Macchio, yeah, he was in The Outsiders, and that was pretty popular, but he was still kind of a young and unproven star. And the rest of the cast, I mean, yeah, they'd been in other projects, but they weren't like huge, big names either. So you had a film that didn't really have like a central star that was like this huge, big household name. It was a relatively low budget movie. It only cost like $8 million. And it comes out and just kicks the competition and is just a huge hit with fans and with critics. I mean, it cost $8 million and it made $130 million worldwide. That's a lot of money in 1984. So it was one of the more successful films of that year. And it's definitely created a legacy that still stands to this day. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about The Karate Kid, except thanks for watching my review. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.